Hi everybody, I'm Damian Osborne and I'm a fine artist from Cape Town in South Africa, and today I'm going to be making canvas panels from scratch. If you'd like more information about painting techniques and or anything regarding art, just check out my website or send me an email. So please stay tuned and I hope you enjoy the video. So I have this piece of hardboard or masonite which has been cut to a square, and I'm going to use this now for my canvas panels. I also have some very fine sort of calico cotton material. You can use whatever kind of material that you like, but I quite like this natural cotton material, and it's got a very fine weave which suits my kind of painting. I'm not so keen on this square format, and I want to go for what's called as far as I know, a roots to ratio. Basically that's the same ratio as all your A series papers, you know, A0, A1, A2, A3, A4, whatever. Okay, so I've got a yoga mat to kneel on, which makes life a bit better. The way to measure your roots to format is measure one side. So one side is 60.5. And then, because this is square, I'm going to just draw a diagonal line here, point to point. Okay. And then I measure 60.5 on the diagonal. There we go. And then this would be at right angles. Let me just measure this here. So that's 42.8. Okay, 42.8. Also use a set square, and there we go. So this is wastage, and that's my format. So this is what I'll use, and I'll cut this part here off. Okay, so now I'm going to cut the board. I don't have a table saw, so I'm just going to do this by hand, and I have a very small cutting mat here. So I'm just going to be careful with this. Got a steel ruler, and I have a craft knife, a Stanley knife, pretty sharp. Just line up my ruler. I like to put my knee on the end to keep it steady so it doesn't shift, but also be very careful I don't cut myself. And then just score it. What you could do as well is you could turn it over and just measure where the cut is on both sides. I'm kind of cheating a bit now. And then draw your line to those marks. Okay. And then start cutting the other side. There we go. Nice clean cut. If your cut's a bit messy, you can just sand it a little bit with some sandpaper. And there we go, that's my format. Okay, my next move is to cut the material to the correct size. So I put my board on the canvas, or the material, and I measure enough space for a fold over on all sides, and which is about 2 fingers width. And then I just take my trusty scissors and just cut it straight along that edge. Depending on the weave of the canvas or the material, sometimes you can just make a little cut and then pull it and get a very straight line. So yeah. Okay, let's try it this way. I'm working on my yoga mat here. Okay, so my next move is to size the material to the board. If you want to know more about sizing, you can check out my website. Traditionally, artists would use rabbit skin glue for sizing the material or the canvas, but today I think we have better materials. So I'm going to be using a PVA, the PVA glue. So the first thing I'm going to do is, this has been diluted with a bit of water, and I put the material on top of the board. You can see here, so everything's lined up nicely. And this is basically just a diluted PVA glue. And it serves to seal the canvas and all the fibers, the weave of the canvas, and also glue it to the board. And then I have some brushes here that I use for this kind of thing. So I use soft bristle or hog's hair brushes, just basically painters' house painting brushes. And I just spread it out from the middle to the corners. Easy. I'm working on the floor and I'm working on top of another canvas, so the floor is protected. If I don't have enough glue, then I have a little container of water here, and I just add some more and mix it together. So it's pretty diluted. And then I just brush it into the weave of the canvas or the material. Trying to make sure that I don't get any creases. So this is quite a thin material, and the size or the glue goes through the holes of the material quite easily. But if you're using quite a heavy canvas, you might have to just paint the back of the board first, then stick your material down. Okay, there we go. So when this is dry, I'm going to turn it over and then do the other side, as in these edges. So I'll just leave it like this for now. Okay, so now I'm going to do the other side, the back, and fold over the material and basically just size it to the back here. Okay, at the corners, I'm just going to fold them like this. Alright, so I'm going to let this dry for a day, and then I'll come back and do the front side again, and then the back side again. So that's basically a simple way of sizing canvas to a board. Okay, so my next move is to now prime the board. So I gave it a double coat of the PVA sizing, which I didn't show you, and then at the back I gave it across like this to try and mitigate the board bending so much. So if your MDF board does bend a little bit, then maybe just go along the back and just give it some more sizing to just soak both sides equally, if that makes any sense. So basically I just made a cross like this with the glue size. It might need some more because I see it's still a little bit bent or warped. But anyway, so today I'm going to be using a chalk-based primer. It's basically Plaster of Paris gypsum, which is calcium sulfate hemihydrate or something, I can't remember now. So what I do is I've got a little tin here, and I've got a little bottle with some water in and some PVA glue that's diluted in there. It's about 40 for a panel this size. Which is about, I think about 60 by 35, 40 centimeters. I need about 40 mils of water and then a big dollop of glue, and I've got a little tin, so I'm going to just pour that all in the, first of all I'm going to shake it up quite a lot. Make sure all the glue is diluted. Okay, so just to recap, this is 2 coats at least of the PVA primer, the PVA sizing. Now the next day, come along and make my white primer. So this DIY method is a lot cheaper than buying primer from the art store, and you also know what's in it, so you can always be assured of the quality. I've got some titanium white powder here. This is a pigment, titanium pigment. And ideally one should actually sieve it through a little sieve. I'm not going to really bother, so I'm going to take 2 tablespoons of titanium white and mix it in my water, shake it up a bit. Yeah. Maybe a little bit more. Okay, that should be fine. So this is basically a water-based primer, and I'm not using rabbit skin glue in this case because although that's the traditional way of doing it, there are purists that like to use it, but there are other studies that show that rabbit skin glue causes cracking and all kinds of things because of changes in humidity, because it's hygroscopic. Anyway, so I'm going to stick with the PVA, it's acid-free. Then I'm going to take a spoon of the Plaster of Paris, this calcium, gypsum, whatever it's called, gypsum. It's quite a fine gypsum. You can use marble dust, you can use calcium carbonate, it's up to you. So with gypsum, as soon as it gets into contact with water, it starts to react. So I just give it a few minutes and it starts to stiffen up a little bit. So I keep shaking it. I've got a little screwdriver here. Just going to stir it up. Consistency of, sort of runny cream. So this is basically about 40 mils of water. I would say about maybe a tablespoon or 2 of PVA wood glue, at least or craft glue. At least it should be acid-free glue. And then 2 tablespoons of the titanium dioxide powder. And 1 tablespoon of the gypsum Plaster of Paris. Okay. I've got a brush here. So just give it a minute or 2 just to stiffen up. Okay. Actually, I'm going to put an apron on. Okay, then you have a little window of time to get this done before the gypsum just becomes a bit too hard and starts to dry instead. Okay, so I'm just going to start from the side here, the edge, and make sure that I get this primer into the weave of the canvas. The way that you used to do it in the old days was to give it about 7 or 8 very fine coats of plaster or primer. So if you don't get it right the first time, it's okay. You know, you can always just sand it down again once it's dry and keep going, give it more coats. But I try to work pretty quickly because it dries quite fast. It feels quite similar to acrylic primer, you know, with the sort of acrylic gesso that you buy in the art store, but slightly more absorbent and has a nice tooth and it dries very fast. It's kind of chalky. You can see there. So the way I brush is, because it dries fast, I go across and then at right angles and get it right into the weave. So the PVA acts as a binder and the pigment is the titanium dioxide and the gypsum. So don't go too thick yet. In fact, don't go thick really ever. Better to have many thin layers than, you know, one large or few big fat layers because they can be quite brittle. And of course, it's best to do this kind of mixture on a rigid support like a board like this. For canvases, I would say maybe use. I don't know. I think I'd go more with more titanium dioxide and maybe a little calcium carbonate rather. And more, I would say preferably an oil-based primer. This is just a basic water-based PVA primer. Okay, that's cool. And then make sure that you also do the little edges. So I'll just quickly just do this. It's done. Scraping my brush off. Okay, I'm just going to clean this up a bit. See that? I don't have a very wide lens, so it's quite tricky to get into the camera, into the view of the scene. Okay, so there we go. That's coat number 1. I'm probably going to do, well, quite a few coats, see how it goes. I don't want to lose the weave of the canvas. So, yeah, let's see how it goes. Okay, so I'm done now, and it's pretty easy basically. I gave this one about, I think about 5 coats. I don't want to give it too many coats because I don't want to lose the sort of the texture of the fabric, and you know, just allow it to dry in between. But it's not rocket science, it's really easy. And something that a little trick that I figured out was don't use a metal tin, because the next day the water in the tin will cause the tin to rust. So rather just stick with a plastic container. If you want to just sand between the layers, otherwise just give it a nice sand with I would say about 100 to 120 grits sandpaper, just very, very gently, and make sure that you get on the corners, the edges as well. You can also, like I said before, you can paint the back if it's starting to bow. You know, you can just paint the whole back like this if you want to. So you can also primer on top of just the plain plywood or masonite, but I quite like the texture or the effect of gluing the canvas or some sort of fabric around it as well, just to give it a bit more uniformity, texture. The chalk ground is quite absorbent, so it works well for using an imprimatura in your painting. If you normally paint just other prima, wet and wet, then I would say just give it a bit of a base coat of linseed oil just to soak in. But I would suggest toning the ground with a light sort of earth color, or doing an imprimatura. You can do a drawing here, charcoal drawing, and then just give it a wash of color and let that just soak in, and that should sort of cut the absorbency a little bit. If you just paint in here directly, then you may have issues with the oil binder being stuck in, by the primer. So watch out for that, because then you can be underbound and your paint can flake off. So yeah. Okay, that's it for now, and I think next time I want to make some of my own oil paint, or at least I want to start making some linseed oil, hand refined linseed oil, and from then I want to make my own linseed oil based oil primer. Yeah, so stay tuned for that. And so this is really great because it cuts a lot of costs that you normally would spend at the art store, and the materials can be just as good, if not better, than what you buy from the art store. So stay tuned, thanks for watching, and please check out DamianOsborne.com and for any more information, or send me a message if you like. Any questions, just go ahead. Yeah, thank you.